today, well, I guess really this week, we're going to begin talking about poetry. And specifically today, I want to just take this introductory lesson and start you off with what the elements of poetry are. But before we get into any of that at all, I want to read a couple of poems to you, just a couple, because I love poetry. I really do. It's a fantastic art form. I'm not super hardcore, go home and read poetry books. I have a few, but the ones I really like. And I like it as an art form. Specifically here in 4th grade, what we're prepping you to do is be able to tell the difference between a poem, prose, or a narrative, and a drama, a play. So I'm going to start you off looking at the elements of poetry today. And we're going to listen to me read a couple of them, and you're going to see me build this anchor chart with you about what makes up a poem. So first, we got one I saved it's on my notes on my laptop. I save it with my quotes. Like I've told you guys before, whenever I come across something I really like, when I'm reading a book, or maybe something I see on the internet, I'll always save it. Like if I come across a word I don't know, I'll write the word down in my notes. There's the notes app, like on your iPad. I'll do it on my phone, and I will look up the definition. And I'll keep it there, just something I can go back and do. But I also do the same for quotes from books, quotes from movies or TV shows, and in here I keep this poem. And this poem is called "Risk" by William Arthur Ward, and I just really like it. I love the message of it, the theme, the idea of it. So what I want you to do is I just want you to listen to me. And as I'm reading it, I want you to stop and I want you to think about, what do you hear? What makes this a poem? What do you hear that when you hear something like this, you go, yeah, that's a poem, I get it. Okay, "Risk" by William Arthur Ward. To laugh is to risk appearing a fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out to another is to risk involvement. To expose feelings is to risk exposing your true self. To place your ideas and dreams before a crowd is to risk their loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To live is to risk dying. To hope is to risk despair. To try is to risk failure. But risks must be taken because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. The person who risks nothing, does nothing, has nothing, is nothing. He may avoid suffering and sorrow, but he cannot learn, feel, change, grow, or live. Chained by his servitude, he is a slave who has forfeited all freedom. Only a person who risks is free. The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change, and the realist adjusts the sails. Did you guys hear that? Hear the elements in that? I love that poem. Essentially, it's about you're going to fail. You're going to mess up so bad sometimes. But you have to be willing to risk those failures, those shortcomings. You have to risk everything sometimes. Because if you don't, you got nothing. Powerful poem. I really like it. And we'll go back and examine it a little later and talk about some of the features in it. And my next poem is by the great Shel Silverstein. I cannot find my copy of Where the Sidewalk Ends, but I have a copy of A Light in the Attic, which one of his best works too. And his stuff is silly and out there, and just look at him. He looks kind of creepy, doesn't he? Looks like a bald beard like me. Anyway, this poem is called "Here Comes," and just listen to it. And once again, what makes it a poem? What do you think as you read it makes you go, "Oh, that's a poem"? Here comes. Here comes summer, here comes summer, chirping robin, budding rose. Here comes summer, gentle showers, summer clothes. Here comes summer, whoosh, shiver, there it goes. What's that poem about? Here comes summer. There's a great song by the Undertones. Here comes summer. Makes me think of that every time. Okay, well, first and foremost, we're going to talk about what makes a poem. What is one thing that all poems have? And the first element I want to talk about is a line. Line. What is a line? A line is a group of words arranged in a row. A group of words arranged in a row. A line, when you're looking at a poem. A line, a line, a line, a line, a line. Okay? The lines of a poem. But then you have how those lines are situated, and that is called a stanza. A stanza, the easiest way to remember this, is kind of like the paragraph of the poetry world. It has all the lines in a stanza, but it looks like a paragraph. And that's just a group of lines within a poem. Group of lines within a poem. So it's like a paragraph in a poem. You know, you read a paragraph in a book and it's, 4 sentences and there's a break, tabbed in, the next paragraph starts. That's what a poem has stanzas. And that means it has lines, and the lines are all in stanzas, which are just paragraphs within the poem. The next thing that all poems have is rhythm and rhyme. Rhythm and rhyme. And what does it mean to have rhythm and rhyme? Well, rhythm and rhyme are a pattern of stressed syllables I should take this over here. And rhyming words. Rhythm and rhyme are a pattern of stressed syllables and rhyming words. Rhythm is just the flow. You say this poem, you say it this way. You got some rhythm, cut the beat. Like music has a beat, poetry has a rhythm. Music has a rhythm. If you ever look at a band that has 2 guitarists, there's one guy playing the lead guitar, and then the other guy's playing the rhythm guitar, just keeping the rhythm going. And then the last thing I want to talk about is repetition. And repetition is what? It's literally just repeating. In a poem, they use repetition to really drive home a point, to really set the tone of the poem. So repetition is lines or words that are repeated in a poem. So lines are words that are repeated in a poem. And repetition is done to show importance. It's done to show how important a word or a phrase is to the poem. Now, I'm going to project those two poems I just read, and I'm going to just point out some of the elements of poetry that is in those two poems, so we can really see how they break down and how they interact with one another. All right? So part 2 of this video will be that. Okay, so as I said, part 2 of this video is going to be me looking at the elements of poetry that we talked about and applying them to a poem. And I wanted to talk about this Risk poem by William Arthur Ward. And once again, to laugh is to risk appearing a fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out to another is to risk involvement. To expose feelings is to risk exposing your true self. To place your ideas and dreams before a crowd is to risk their loss. To love is to risk not being loved in return. To hope is to risk despair. To try is to risk to failure. But risk must be taken because the greatest hazard in life is to risk nothing. The person who risks nothing, does nothing, has nothing, is nothing. He may avoid suffering and sorrow, but he cannot learn, feel, change, grow, or live. Chained by his servitude, he's a slave who has forfeited all freedom. Only a person who risks is free. That's a little different than the version I have. So I need to look up why there's 2 different versions. But I found this one. As I was Googling online, I couldn't find the version I had. So maybe this is the original version. That's embarrassing, huh? The only difference between the one I've had on my laptop for 5 years now, and this one is the bottom where it talks about the optimists and sailing, that sort of thing. But anyway, so the first thing I want to point out is a line. A line for a poem is this. That is a line. A group of words arranged in a row. Poems are usually structured in this format. They have a line going like this. Usually there's some sort of punctuation at the end, or maybe not some punctuation. Then it'll just go down to the next line. To laugh is to risk appearing a fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. Done. Those 2 lines right there form a stanza. Those 2 lines together form a stanza. Remember, a stanza is a group of lines within a poem. That's a group of lines, 2 lines right there, grouped together, forming a stanza, like a paragraph kind of. Rhythm and rhyme, do you hear the way that I would read it? So, to laugh is to risk appearing a fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. To reach out to another is to risk involvement. To expose your feelings is to risk exposing your true self. When you read, you're not reading, it's kind of like reading a book, in that you aren't reading robotic. And one thing about poetry is that it's a form of expression. And you're not going to laugh is to risk appearing a fool. To weep is to risk appearing sentimental. No, that's not how you read poetry. You read poetry with rhythm and feeling. The one thing this poem does not have that's on our list is rhyme. Now, a common misconception about poetry is that all poems must rhyme. I'm here to show you this week that that is not true. Okay? Poems have many different styles. They don't all rhyme. Okay? And then the last thing here, repetition. Lines or words that are repeated in a poem. Well, I can go ahead and say there's two. The word two starts every line in every stanza up here. Remember, these are going to be stanzas because there's 1, 2, 3 lines right here. That forms a stanza, a group of lines. Then the William Arthur Ward switches it up. The word two is not repeated. However, you know what word is repeated? I see nothing there, nothing, 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 nothing. Words that are repeated in poems are usually important. They are of some importance to the poet. They are of some importance to the poem. So, to place, to love, to hope, to try. And it says nothing. The person who says nothing, 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 nothing. Really driving home that point that, you know, he believes that if you aren't taking risks and trying things and trying some different things, then you got nothing in life. Once again, guys, I really like this poem because I just like the message of it. The idea that you have to be willing to try new things. It's actually been a guiding thing for me since I started doing the teaching program at college, and something that I think about when they're like, hey, we need a virtual teacher. Nobody knows how to, I mean, this is uncharted territory, kind of. I mean, for me anyway, for all of us here, nobody knows really how to be virtual teachers. So I'm risking, I'm trying. And kind of paying off. I think so, in a way. It's an interesting new way to try it out. But that's neither here nor there. I'm just explaining why that poem has some meaning for me. But elements in poetry, guys. This is what we're going to be looking at all week, okay? And tomorrow we're going to look at a couple more poems. I'm going to look at some more elements, and I'm going to really point out those elements that help you identify what makes a poem. All right? Please look at what you need to do to mark this activity as completed. If you need any help understanding the elements of poetry, please holler at me. All right, guys. Royans. Oot!